They called him the Big Bear, a man whose very presence could silence a crowded arena. His fists were hammers, his stare was ice, and his reputation was fear itself. For many, the image of Sonny Liston is forever tied to that shocking night against Muhammad Ali when the world saw a giant fall. But that single moment, replayed endlessly, hides the deeper truth. Before Ali, before the controversy, Liston was the most terrifying heavyweight alive, a champion forged in hardship, feared by champions, and respected by all who dared to share the ring. Myth says he was just a brute, a thug who relied only on raw power. Reality paints a different picture: a disciplined worker, a relentless trainer, and a man who carried the weight of a troubled past onto the world's grandest stage. His jab was not just strong, it was called the most punishing in boxing history. His knockouts weren't accidents. They were the result of ruthless repetition and unshakable will. So how does a boy from the fields of Arkansas, a child of poverty and punishment, rise to rule the heavyweight division? And why, despite his dominance, does his legacy remain one of tragedy as much as triumph? This is the untold journey of Sonny Liston. Welcome to Boxing Chronicles. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe as we take a deep dive into the life, training, and legacy of one of boxing's most feared champions. Charles Sonny Liston was born in the shadow of hardship. The exact year remains uncertain. Most historians place it around 1932 in the rural poverty of Sanslow, Arkansas. He was one of at least 25 children fathered by Tobe Liston, a violent and abusive sharecropper. Sonny grew up in a world where survival came before dreams, where the daily rhythm was dictated by cotton fields and the constant fear of his father's belt. Illiterate and dressed in rags, he quickly became the target of ridicule and neglect. Liston's mother, Helen, eventually fled the abusive marriage and moved to St. Louis, but Sonny remained behind for years, laboring in the fields like an animal of burden. School was a fleeting notion. He never learned to read as a child. The young boy carried more bruises than books, more scars than memories of joy. By his teenage years, the harshness of farm life and the absence of nurturing guidance had already shaped him into a figure of quiet, intimidating strength. In his late teens, Sonny followed his mother to St. Louis, seeking a fresh start. Instead, he fell into a life of petty crime, muggings, robberies, and a police record that seemed destined to end in prison or death. By 1950, he was convicted of armed robbery and sent to the Missouri State Penitentiary. It was here, within prison walls, that fate intervened. A Catholic priest named Father Stevens introduced Sonny to the boxing gym. The transformation was immediate. The same fists that had once stolen purses now pounded heavy bags with terrifying force. Guards and inmates alike watched in awe as this massive, broad-shouldered young man displayed unnatural power. For the first time in his life, Sonny Liston wasn't just feared, he was respected. That prison gym was his first glimpse of purpose, the first step from forgotten farm boy to future heavyweight king. When Sonny Liston walked out of the Missouri State Penitentiary in 1952, he carried little more than his towering frame, a pair of heavy fists, and the faint promise of a second chance. It was Father Stevens and a small circle of local supporters who urged him to pursue boxing seriously. Almost immediately, his sheer physical presence drew attention. Standing over 6 feet tall with an 84-inch reach, Liston looked like a man built for one purpose: domination in the ring. He began fighting as an amateur under the guidance of prison guards who had seen his raw talent. His progress was rapid, his punches devastating. In 1953, Liston captured the Golden Gloves Heavyweight Championship in Chicago, a moment that announced his arrival to the boxing world. Observers didn't see finesse, they saw something more primal, a natural-born destroyer with frightening potential. Turning professional later that same year, Liston entered a fight game that welcomed him with equal parts curiosity and suspicion. His past was no secret. His connections to the streets of St. Louis and rumored ties to organized crime cast a long shadow. Still, in the ring, those doubts vanished. Liston began carving a reputation through a string of brutal victories, battering opponents with his sledgehammer jab and overwhelming strength. Not everything was smooth. Early on, he faced skepticism from promoters who saw him as too rough, too unpredictable, too dangerous outside the ropes. Yet each victory silenced a critic. His breakout came in 1959 when he dismantled Cleveland Williams, twice earning recognition as the most feared contender in the division. By then, whispers had grown louder. Liston wasn't just another heavyweight. He was a looming force that even champions wanted to avoid. From convict to contender in less than a decade, Sonny Liston's rise was both improbable and inevitable. He had entered the world's toughest sport carrying the weight of his past, and already the heavyweight throne seemed within reach. To understand Sonny Liston's dominance, you must first understand his training. He wasn't born with a champion's polish. He was forged through hours of grueling, repetitive, punishing work. While others sharpened their skills with finesse and clever tactics, Liston's preparation was rooted in raw, relentless labor. His body became a weapon through routines as merciless as the man himself. Every morning began with road work. Liston would run miles before dawn, pounding the pavement in heavy boots, his massive shoulders rolling with each stride. Unlike the lighter-footed fighters of his era, Sonny didn't run for speed, he ran for endurance, building a foundation that allowed him to stalk opponents without slowing. By the time he entered the gym, his shirt clung heavy with sweat, but his real work was only beginning. In the gym, the heavy bag was his best friend and his greatest enemy. Trainers recalled him hammering the bag with such force that the chain shook loose from the ceiling. His jab, later hailed as the hardest ever thrown, wasn't an accident. It was drilled endlessly, over and over, until it landed like a pile driver. Sparring partners said a single jab from Liston felt like being hit by another man's right hand. His left wasn't just a setup punch, it was a knockout weapon on its own. Sparring sessions were brutal. He often faced multiple partners, rotating fresh men against him while he remained in the ring, forcing his body to fight through exhaustion. The philosophy was simple: if he could break them in practice, he would destroy them in real competition. Calisthenics filled the rest of his routine: push-ups, sit-ups, medicine ball drills, all performed in high repetition to build toughness, not glamour. Strength was another cornerstone of Liston's preparation. Long before weightlifting became common in boxing, Liston incorporated resistance training, hoisting iron to enhance his already frightening power. His forearms bulged from years of labor in the fields and were further hardened in the gym. Trainers claimed that his grip strength was so overwhelming he could crush a phone book with his bare hands. Yet his training wasn't just about physicality. Liston studied opponents quietly and obsessively, focusing on weaknesses he could exploit. He wasn't a flamboyant strategist like Ali or a technician like Joe Louis, but his preparation was ruthless in its clarity: walk forward, cut off the ring, and impose his will. Diet was plain but effective. He ate hearty working man meals: steak, eggs, potatoes, fueling his body like an engine. There was no talk of modern sports science. His recovery came from sheer toughness and repetition. Day after day, his body absorbed the punishment, hardened, and returned stronger. Perhaps the most revealing part of his preparation was his mindset during training. Sonny Liston wasn't motivated by glory or fame. He trained because boxing was his survival, his escape from the life he left behind. Each punch he threw in practice carried the weight of a past he could never outrun. By the early 1960s, his preparation had transformed him into the most feared man in boxing. Opponents didn't just lose to Sonny Liston in the ring, they lost weeks before when they heard stories of his workouts, his bone-crushing jab, and his endless endurance. Training didn't just make him strong, it made him inevitable. If Sonny Liston's fists were his weapons, his mind was the silent storm behind them. He cultivated an aura that crushed opponents long before the first bell. With his massive frame, cold stare, and unshakable silence, Liston mastered the art of intimidation. Trainers, writers, and rivals all said the same thing. When Sonny looked at you, you felt the fight slipping away. Unlike the showmen of his era, Liston avoided flashy words or playful banter. He preferred silence, letting his presence do the talking. This wasn't arrogance, it was psychological warfare. To Liston, boxing wasn't just a test of strength, it was a contest of fear. He believed that if a man doubted himself for even a second, the fight was already his. But beneath that icy exterior was a man forged by hardship. Growing up with an abusive father and a life of poverty had taught him one lesson: pain was normal, suffering was expected. That upbringing created a mental toughness few fighters could match. He never complained about long runs, endless sparring, or the weight of expectation. To him, those challenges were nothing compared to the beatings and neglect of his youth. Liston also understood discipline. He didn't party like other fighters. He trained, rested, and lived like a soldier, preparing for war. His trainers often remarked that his greatest strength was not just his jab, but his patience. He didn't rush, he stalked. He broke opponents down mentally before breaking them physically. There's a famous saying in boxing: the fight is won or lost before you even step into the ring. Sonny Liston embodied that truth. He weaponized fear, harnessed discipline, and carried the scars of his past as armor. In the ring, he wasn't just fighting men, he was fighting ghosts, and that made him almost unstoppable. By the early 1960s, Sonny Liston was no longer just a feared contender. He was the man the heavyweight division tried to avoid. His dominance in the ring was so complete that champions delayed meeting him, hoping his threat might fade. But it never did. The defining moment came on September the 25th, 1962, when Liston finally got his long-awaited shot at heavyweight champion Floyd Patterson. For years, critics said Patterson's style, fast, sharp, technically clean, would expose Liston's brute force. What happened shocked the world. In just 2 minutes and 6 seconds of the first round, Patterson lay on the canvas, destroyed by Liston's jab and finishing blows. A new champion had arrived. Sports writers didn't just call it a win, they called it an execution. Less than a year later, in their rematch, Patterson vowed revenge. Instead, the outcome was even more brutal. On July 22, 1963, Liston knocked him out again in the first round, this time in 2 minutes and 10 seconds. With those back-to-back demolitions, Sonny Liston became the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. Many believed he was unbeatable. His jab was described as like being hit with a telephone pole. His power was so intimidating that legends such as George Foreman later admitted to modeling their ferocity on Liston's example. At the height of his reign, he seemed less like a boxer and more like a force of nature. But then came the seismic shift. February 25th, 1964, Miami Beach. Liston defended his title against a brash young challenger named Cassius Clay, soon to be Muhammad Ali. Liston was a massive favorite. Odds makers didn't ask if he would win, they asked how quickly. Yet what unfolded was one of the greatest upsets in sports history. Ali's speed, movement, and fearless taunting broke through the myth of invincibility. At the end of the 6th round, Liston, battered and frustrated, failed to answer the bell. The world was stunned. A year later, the rematch ended in even greater controversy. Just 105 seconds into the first round, Liston was floored by what became known as the Phantom Punch. Whether it was a perfect shot or something more sinister remains debated to this day. That moment defined his career as much as his championship glory. Still, his reign cannot be ignored. 50 victories, 39 by knockout, and a championship run that left even seasoned veterans in awe. For a time, Sonny Liston was the scariest man alive, and his name remains etched in boxing history as the heavyweight who once ruled with fear and iron fists. For Sonny Liston, the fall was as dramatic as the rise. After the shocking defeat to Muhammad Ali in 1964 and the infamous Phantom Punch in their 1965 rematch, his aura of invincibility vanished almost overnight. The man once seen as unstoppable was now painted as vulnerable, and whispers of corruption, mob ties, and personal demons followed him wherever he went. The loss to Ali was more than just a defeat inside the ropes. It was a crushing blow to Liston's identity. For years, opponents had looked at him with fear. Now they looked with curiosity, even hope. The once mighty champion was suddenly human, and in the brutal world of heavyweight boxing, mercy was never offered to fallen kings. Yet Liston did not disappear. Refusing to be remembered only as Ali's victim, he staged a comeback. From 1966 to 1969, he strung together a series of victories, displaying flashes of the old Big Bear. Against fighters like Henry Clark and Billy Joyner, Liston proved he still carried frightening power, his jab still thudding like a hammer. Though no longer the same destructive force, he was respected as a gatekeeper, a man younger heavyweights had to survive before dreaming of glory. But the shadows never left. Critics questioned his motivation, his conditioning, and his connections outside the ring. His age, already uncertain due to his murky birth records, worked against him. By the late 1960s, the sport was moving on, ushering in a new generation of fighters inspired by Ali's charisma and speed. Still, Liston's return to relevance showed remarkable resilience. He didn't reclaim the heavyweight crown, but he reclaimed his pride, proving that even after humiliation, he could stand tall, fight hard, and command respect. His comeback was less about titles and more about survival, a testament to the toughness that had defined him since childhood. Sonny Liston's story is one of contradictions, raw power and fragile humanity, dominance and downfall, fear and respect. Though his reign at the top was brief, his impact on the heavyweight division was seismic. At his peak, Liston was considered unbeatable. His jab was described by sports writers as the most punishing in boxing history, and his aura of intimidation influenced generations of fighters who came after him. George Foreman once admitted that watching Liston inspired his own ferocious style, proving that Sonny's shadow stretched far beyond his own era. Statistically, his record speaks volumes: 50 wins, 39 knockouts, and only 4 losses. For a man who rose from prison walls and the cotton fields of Arkansas, those numbers tell a story of resilience as much as dominance. He became heavyweight champion of the world, a title few believed a boy of his background could ever touch. But Sonny's legacy is more than victories. His life embodied the truth that greatness in the ring does not erase demons outside of it. His troubled past, mysterious associations, and tragic early death in 1970 at the age of 38 leave questions that may never be answered. Was he destroyed by forces outside his control, or by the weight of his own history? The lessons, however, remain clear. Liston's rise teaches us that no beginning is too dark to forge greatness. His training shows the power of relentless work, repetition, and discipline. And his fall reminds us that strength alone is not enough. True legacy requires more than fear. It requires endurance of character. Sonny Liston was more than a heavyweight champion. He was a man who embodied both the brutal beauty and the haunting tragedy of boxing. His story endures because it reflects the sport itself, glorious, unforgiving, and unforgettable. Sonny Liston's life was never a simple tale of victories and defeats. He was a man shaped by hardship, feared for his power, and remembered for both triumph and tragedy. To some, he was the ultimate enforcer of the heavyweight division, a monster in the ring whose jab could end a fight before it began. To others, he was a tragic figure, haunted by a past he could never outrun, and defined by a controversial fall against Muhammad Ali. But perhaps the truth lies somewhere in between. Sonny Liston was not born a monster. He was forged into one. Forged by the cotton fields of Arkansas, by the prison walls that became his training ground, and by a boxing world that demanded both glory and spectacle. His name will always stir debate, yet one fact cannot be denied. For a time, Sonny Liston was the scariest man alive, a champion who embodied the brutal essence of heavyweight boxing. So, what do you remember most about Sonny Liston? His thunderous jab, his reign of fear, or the haunting image of his fall? Let us know in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this deep dive into the legend of Sonny Liston, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories of boxing's greatest icons. This is Boxing Chronicles, where the legends live forever.